If Duke hadn't clawed at that suitcase, no one would have known. Not Ben. Not Ellie. Not even their mom, who cried the day she picked Grandpa Harold up from the airport with balloons and a homemade welcome sign. But dogs like Duke don't forget, and they definitely don't forgive. Duke wasn't just barking that day. He was warning them, clawing like his paws were on fire, teeth bared, pressed against a piece of luggage no one had paid attention to for weeks. At first, everyone thought it was just weird dog behavior, but what Duke uncovered in that old leather suitcase would unravel a lie that had lived inside their home for months, maybe years. It started on a Saturday, laundry day. Ben remembered because the house smelled like dryer sheets and his mom was blasting Kenny Chesney through the kitchen speaker. It was a warm April morning in Nashville, the kind of day when the windows were cracked open just enough for birdsong and the smell of cut grass to drift in. Grandpa Harold had been staying with them for about 3 weeks. He said he needed family after a rough time in Florida. His lease was up, his knees were bad, and he missed seeing the grandkids. He said the words like he believed them, and at first everyone did. Ben liked having him around. Harold told cool stories about the Navy, taught him how to whittle little animals out of sticks, and bought the good orange juice with no pulp. But Duke? Duke didn't like Grandpa one bit. It was strange. Duke had served as a K-9 with the sheriff's department for almost 8 years. Retired now, he still had that edge, a working dog's alertness, the steady watchfulness. But he was never aggressive. Not until Harold moved in. Ben first noticed it when Harold reached out to pet Duke on the porch, and Duke backed away, growling low. Not barking, just that deep rumble dogs make when something's off. I guess he's still adjusting, Harold had chuckled, kneeling slowly. It's okay, boy, I'm no threat. Duke didn't buy it. Neither should they have. That suitcase, the one Duke started clawing at, was sitting in the corner of Harold's guest room. It was thick, brown leather, worn at the edges, and had a brass lock that didn't seem to close quite right. It never moved. Not once. Harold never unpacked it. He said it held private stuff, just old photos and letters from his Navy days. Nobody questioned it. Until that Saturday. Ben had just finished pouring cereal when he heard it. A scratching sound from down the hall, steady, repetitive, almost desperate. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Duke! He called. No response, just more scratching. He followed the sound, stepping slowly through the carpeted hallway until he reached the guest room. Duke was standing at the foot of the bed, hunched over the suitcase, pawing hard at the front pocket. His ears were pinned, and his breath came fast, snorting, agitated. Ben opened the door wider. "What are you doing, boy?" Duke looked back at him, then at the suitcase, then whined, and that's when Ben saw it. The corner of the front pocket was frayed, almost chewed open, and something dark and thin was poking out, like the edge of a folder or envelope. "Hey!" Grandpa's voice cut through the hallway like a whip. Ben jumped. Harold stood behind him, face tight, lips thin. "What's going on here?" "Duke was I think he smelled something." Harold's gaze dropped to the suitcase. That dog's never respected boundaries. Then he grabbed the suitcase, yanked it onto the bed, and snapped it shut. From that moment on, Duke wouldn't leave the hallway. He laid there for hours, head resting on his paws, eyes locked on that door like a soldier guarding a perimeter. Like stories about heroic dogs who just know when something's wrong? Make sure to subscribe to Heroes for Animals on YouTube for powerful true stories that will stick with you long after the video ends. That night, Ben sat in bed thinking. Duke had been with them since Ben was 6. He trusted that dog more than most people. Duke had sniffed out 2 kids in a barn fire, helped find a missing hiker in the woods near Franklin. He'd even detected a gas leak in their neighbor's house last fall before anyone smelled a thing. So when Duke barked, when he growled, when he clawed at something, he meant it. Still, Ben didn't know what to do. He thought maybe Ellie would. She was older, 17, and had a way of reading between the lines, especially when it came to adults. He knocked on her door, Duke trailing behind. "You ever think Grandpa's weird?" he asked. Ellie blinked at him from behind her laptop. "Weird how?" Ben shrugged. "Just off. Duke doesn't like him. And I saw something in his suitcase." Ellie closed the laptop. "What kind of something?" "I don't know, paper, but Grandpa freaked out." Ellie frowned. "Mom says he was in the Navy, right?" "Yeah." "She ever show you any photos, like from when he was younger?" Ben paused. No. He says all his old stuff burned in a storage fire in Miami. Ellie raised an eyebrow. Convenient. The next morning, Ellie asked a subtle question at breakfast. Grandpa, what was your rank in the Navy again? Harold didn't miss a beat. Petty officer first class, why? She smiled. Just writing a paper for school. That was a lie. She later told Ben she Googled him. Harold T. Merriman, former Navy. Nothing. No military records, no obituary for his supposed wife, no public Facebook, not even a LinkedIn profile. Ben stared at her. So what does that mean? Ellie looked at Duke, who was still camped in the hallway like a sentry. I don't know yet, she said, but we need to open that suitcase. Ben's heart pounded. You think he's dangerous? She nodded slowly. I think he's not who he says he is. That night, they waited until Harold took his usual walk, 20 minutes around the block at exactly 7:30 p.m. Duke stood by the door until he heard it close, then turned toward the guest room with purpose. Together, Ben and Ellie crept in. The suitcase sat in the corner, still sealed tight. But now, a flap in the bottom was fully torn open, courtesy of Duke's relentless work. Inside was a manila folder. Ben pulled it out with shaking hands. Inside, a Florida driver's license with a different name. A social security card. Same photo, same face, different identity. A stack of documents stamped in Spanish, and a birth certificate from a town in Panama. Ben looked up at Ellie, breath shallow. This isn't real, is it? Ellie didn't answer. She just whispered, We need to call someone. Duke whined once, softly, and placed a paw on the folder. It wasn't just a dog's instinct. It was a warning. The folder lay open on the bed like a wound. Ben couldn't stop staring at the ID. Victor Ortega, born in Colon, Panama, issued in Florida. Same face as Grandpa Harold. Ellie sat beside him, flipping slowly through the papers. Her fingers trembled a little, but her voice stayed firm. 2 social security cards, 2 names, 1 face, Ben whispered. Why would someone do that? Duke sat by the door, eyes locked on the hallway. His ears twitched at every sound. He's running from something, Ellie said. Nobody fakes an identity because they like paperwork. They both flinched when they heard the front door open. Quick! Ellie grabbed the folder and shoved it under her hoodie. Ben zipped the suitcase and shoved it back in the corner just as Grandpa's footsteps echoed down the hallway. He walked in holding a reusable grocery bag and a 6-pack of root beer. Y'all hungry? Thought I'd grill out tonight. Burgers sound good? Sure, Ben croaked. Harold glanced at him, then Ellie. His eyes narrowed for a second, just long enough to notice something was off. You kids okay? Ellie smiled too fast. Yeah, just studying. He raised an eyebrow. Studying? On a Sunday? College prep. He nodded slowly, then walked out toward the kitchen. They didn't breathe until the fridge door slammed shut. That night, Ellie texted someone named Amy Keller, a girl from her true crime club who interned for a private investigator. Her uncle works missing persons cases in Florida, Ellie explained to Ben. I sent him photos of the documents. Ben sat on the floor of her room, still clutching Duke's collar. Isn't that dangerous? I didn't give him our names, just the IDs. Do you think he's like a criminal? Ellie hesitated. If he's not Harold Merriman and he's using someone else's name, yeah, that's illegal. Ben stared out the window. The backyard swayed in the wind. Duke growled low in his throat. The next day felt normal, too normal. Harold made waffles. He hummed Johnny Cash while fixing the porch railing. He even told a joke about a possum and a mailbox that made their mom laugh until she snorted. Ben couldn't reconcile the man flipping pancakes in the kitchen with the one hiding identities in his luggage. That afternoon, Ellie got a response from Amy. My uncle ran the name Victor Ortega through his old records. Said he was flagged by Homeland Security in 2001 for falsifying tax documents in Miami. No convictions. Then he disappeared. Ben stared at the text. Disappeared? Like vanished. No credit trail, no lease, nothing after 2004. Ben looked at Duke, whose nose was twitching toward the guest room door again. What if this guy's not just a fake? What if he's hiding from something worse? That night, Ben tiptoed to the hallway again. Grandpa's door was closed. The light was off. He leaned in, then paused. There was a sound coming from inside. A voice. Not loud, just low and deliberate. Ben leaned closer, pressing his ear to the door. I told you, no one suspects anything yet. The kids might be nosy, but they don't know who I really am. I'll figure it out. Give it another week. The phone clicked off. Ben's blood turned cold. He stepped back right into Duke, who was staring at the door like it might explode open any second. Ben didn't sleep that night, neither did Duke. The next morning, their mom packed Harold's favorite sandwich in a paper bag and kissed him on the cheek before he went on his morning walk. Ben watched from the porch as he disappeared down the sidewalk. "We have to tell Mom," Ben said. Ellie shook her head. "Not yet. She won't believe it unless we have something solid. She thinks he's her dad. That kind of trust doesn't break easy." "But what if she's in danger?" Ellie paused. "Then we work fast." She sat down on the porch swing, opened her laptop, and dug deeper. Ben watched the worry lines form between her brows. "There's no military record. Not under Harold Merriman. Not under Victor Ortega either. And the Panama birth certificate is fake, registered to a man who died in 1992. Ben's throat tightened. "So he's pretending to be two dead men?" Ellie closed the laptop. "I think he's not either of them. I think Grandpa is his third identity." Duke barked sharply. They turned to see him pacing in front of the guest room again. Ben walked over and opened the door. Duke rushed in and went straight for the closet. With one paw, he began to scratch at the floorboard near the back corner. Hard, frantic scratches, faster than before. Ellie joined them, shining her phone's flashlight into the shadows. "There's something under there," she said. Ben dropped to his knees. The floorboard was loose. He wedged his fingers under it and pulled. A small space. Dusty. Sealed in a gallon Ziploc bag. Another folder. They stared at it. Ben opened it slowly. Inside were photos, dozens. All of them of Harold, but younger. Different hair, different clothing, different people. Ellie flipped one over. Richard Foley, Chicago, 1996. Another photo. Miguel Ortiz, Santa Fe, 1989. "This guy's been living as different people for decades," Ellie whispered. "He changes names like clothes." Ben stared at the pile of old passports, some fake, some maybe real. Then Ellie pulled out a final item, a flyer. A black and white copy of a missing persons notice. Dated August 2000, a woman and child. Last seen with Victor Ortega. Ben's stomach dropped. "I'm calling the sheriff," Ellie said. "This is beyond us." "No," Ben said. "Let's call Dad first. He'll know what to do." They didn't even hear the front door open. "Looking for something?" Harold's voice filled the room like a snake sliding across gravel. Ben turned. Harold stood in the doorway, calm, hands in his pockets. But his eyes weren't Grandpa eyes anymore. They were cold, calculating. Ben stepped back instinctively. Duke moved between them, growling, hackles up, tail straight as a broom handle. "I told you to leave my things alone," Harold said quietly. Ellie stood, fists clenched. "You're not who you say you are," Harold smiled. "And you think anyone will believe two kids and a half-bald dog over me?" Duke barked once, ferocious and sharp. Ben spoke, voice shaking. "We already called someone." That wasn't true. But Harold didn't know that. He blinked, just once. Then his smile dropped. "I see," he said. "Well, I guess it's time to move on again." He turned to leave. "Stop!" Ellie shouted. Harold paused in the hallway. "No one's hurt. I came here for peace. You could have let me have that. Not when you've hurt people before." He turned slowly. "You don't know anything about me." "Then tell us," Ben said. "Tell us who you really are." Harold's face hardened. "You're too young to understand. Some things don't need explaining." Then he walked toward the front door. Duke bolted after him, barking so loudly it shook the windows. But Harold was gone. Disappeared down the street like he never existed. The sheriff arrived an hour later. After Duke calmed down, they handed over the folders, the IDs, the photos. The officer said he'd forward it all to federal authorities. Identity theft, fraud, possibly more. They searched the house, the neighborhood. But Harold, or whoever he was, had vanished again. Ben sat on the steps with Duke curled beside him, head in his lap. Ellie joined him, sipping warm Sprite from a can. "You think they'll catch him?" Ben asked. She nodded, eventually. "But how did Duke know?" She smiled. "Dogs see what we don't. They don't need proof, just instinct." Ben stroked Duke's ears. "He saved us." Ellie whispered, "He always does." The next morning, the front porch felt like a crime scene. Ben sat on the top step, knees pulled to his chest, watching Duke pace the yard like he was still on patrol. Every gust of wind made him flinch. Every car that passed, he watched like it might bring Harold back. But Harold didn't return, and maybe that was worse. "I hate this," Ben muttered. Ellie dropped onto the step beside him, holding 2 mugs. She handed him one. "It's hot chocolate. Mom's trying to keep things normal." Ben took a sip. It was lukewarm, too sweet. "She's still not convinced," Ellie added quietly. "She thinks Grandpa might be sick. Dementia or something." Ben stared at his muddy sneakers. Sick people don't run away like that, and they don't stash fake passports in the floorboards. Ellie nodded. I know, but she wants to believe the man who tucked her in at night when she was little didn't just lie his way back into her life. Ben didn't answer. Instead, he watched Duke. The old German shepherd had been restless since Harold left. He'd sniffed every inch of the guest room, every drawer, even circled the backyard twice before barking at the garden shed like it had offended him personally. Ellie noticed too. You think he's still trying to tell us something? Ben shrugged. Maybe. He hasn't touched his food since yesterday. Duke suddenly stopped pacing and turned back toward the house. His ears twitched. Then he barked, short and sharp, and bolted for the porch. Ben jumped to his feet. What is it, boy? Duke ran past him, through the open front door, claws skidding against the hardwood floor. He made a sharp right, back toward the guest room. Again, Ellie muttered, following him. Ben was already behind her. By the time they reached the room, Duke was at it again, pawing at the oak desk in the corner. Not the suitcase, not the closet. This time it was the desk. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Ben stepped closer. We checked this already. Ellie crouched beside Duke. Wait, look at this. She pulled the chair out of the way. Behind one of the desk drawers was a false panel, barely visible unless you were looking for it, and Duke was definitely looking. Ellie pried it open with a letter opener. Inside, a single USB drive wrapped in electrical tape. Ben picked it up carefully. What is this? No idea, Ellie said, already reaching for her laptop. They plugged it in and waited. The files were messy, scanned documents, a few audio recordings, and one folder labeled RFOR Logs 2003. Ellie opened the first file, a scanned fax from a law office in Miami. To Victor Ortega, subject wire confirmation amount, $72,400 transferred to offshore account ending in 7291. Ben leaned in. That's a lot of money. The next document was a scanned letter, a woman's handwriting, signed M. You said we were just trying to fix the system, that we'd walk away clean. Now I'm the one left holding the bag. Don't ever contact me again. They both sat back in silence. Okay, Ellie whispered. So Grandpa wasn't just faking his identity. He was laundering money, maybe involved in some kind of white-collar ring. Ben stared at the screen. Do you think the FBI is already looking for this stuff? I hope so. She copied the files to her desktop and sent them to the sheriff's office with a note. Then she leaned back and exhaled hard. Ben looked at her. So what now? Ellie stared at Duke, who was now curled up beneath the desk. We wait. But waiting wasn't easy. Their mom was barely speaking to them. After the police took the documents, she sank into a quiet sort of denial, going through the motions but with this vacant look in her eyes, like she was watching the world from underwater. I just need proof, she kept saying. Solid, undeniable proof. Ben couldn't understand it. The passports, the IDs, the missing persons flyer, they had proof. But Ellie explained it in a way that stuck. She wasn't protecting him, she said. She was protecting the version of him she wanted to be real. 2 days later, Duke did it again. This time it was the garage. Ben was taking out the trash when Duke suddenly growled, low and deep, and charged toward the garage door. He barked twice, then sat down, still like a statue, staring at the handle. Ben dropped the trash bag and ran to let him in. What is it now? Duke trotted past the lawnmower, past the shelves of old paint cans, straight to the far corner behind the water heater. There, in the dust, sat a taped-up cardboard box with a shipping label dated March 2022, just a month before Harold arrived. Ellie was home by then. She joined him, brushing dust off the label. It's from New Mexico, she read, shipped to a P.O. box under the name James L. Brooks. Ben opened it. Inside, a burner phone, a map of Tennessee with 5 towns circled, and a folded newspaper clipping about a woman named Lorena Ruiz, listed as a whistleblower in a government contractor fraud case. Her photo was paper-clipped to the article. Ben felt sick. She's the woman from that flyer, he whispered. Ellie took the phone and plugged it in. It buzzed to life. One voicemail, one message. Ben hit play. You said you'd protect me, that we'd leave the country by May. You lied. You left me here. And now they're watching my house. Don't ever come back, Victor. Ben felt like the floor had dropped from under him. He used her, Ellie said. Like he used us, used Mom. Probably changed his face, changed his name, and disappeared when things got too hot. Ben clenched his fists. He's never coming back, is he? I don't think he ever intended to. That night they told their mom everything. They showed her the USB, the phone, the voicemail. They played her the woman's voice, the emotion in her words. She didn't cry, not at first, but then she picked up the newspaper clipping and stared at it for a long time. Her shoulders slumped. Her face cracked. "He called me every birthday," she whispered. "Said he missed me. Said he wanted to be part of our lives. I believed every word." Duke sat by her feet, quiet, steady. "I even told him we had a dog," she said. "He joked he wasn't a dog person. I should have known." Ben sat beside her and placed a hand on her arm. "You didn't do anything wrong." She nodded slowly. "I know, but I let a stranger into this house, into your lives. That's something I'll carry." Ellie spoke gently. "You kicked him out when it counted. You believed Duke. That means something." Their mom wiped her eyes. "That dog knew from day one." The next morning, Duke lay in the sun by the porch steps, eyes closed, chest rising and falling like a metronome. The sheriff called just after breakfast. They'd sent the evidence to the FBI. A warrant had been issued for Victor Ortega, also known as Richard Foley, James Brooks, and possibly 3 other aliases. He was now considered a suspect in an international financial fraud investigation dating back 20 years. Ben hung up the phone, stunned. They said Duke basically solved a federal case. Ellie laughed. "We should give him a medal." Their mom smiled. "No, we give him a steak." She walked to the fridge, pulled out the sirloin she'd been saving for dinner, and set it on a plate. She brought it out to Duke and placed it on the ground gently. "Good boy," she whispered. "You protected us. You saw the truth." Duke didn't bark, didn't whine. He just took a single bite and laid his head on her lap. Some heroes don't wear capes. Some wear scars, have cloudy eyes, and still know exactly who to trust and who not to. The morning after the sheriff's call, the house felt different, not quieter. Ben could still hear the washing machine churning in the laundry room and the lawnmower buzzing from the neighbor's yard. But the energy inside was different, like the air had cleared, like something poisonous had been pushed out. But the weight hadn't fully lifted, because Harold, or Victor, or whatever his real name was still out there. And Duke? Duke hadn't stopped pacing. Ben noticed it before breakfast. The old German shepherd wouldn't settle, not on the porch, not on the rug in the living room. He kept trotting back and forth between the front door and the window that looked out on the street, ears twitching, eyes sharp. "He knows it's not over," Ben whispered. Ellie nodded as she scrolled through her inbox. "We got a message back from the FBI." Ben straightened. "Already?" "They're connecting the dots," she said. "They want us to send anything else we find. Documents, notes, receipts, anything physical that might point to where he's headed." Their mom was already in the dining room, pulling boxes from the closet where Harold had stored his keepsakes. She set each one on the table and opened them, one by one. Most were junk. Old jackets, broken pens, a baseball glove with someone else's name written inside. But halfway through the third box, Ellie found something. A receipt from a gas station just outside Santa Fe, dated 6 weeks before Harold showed up in Tennessee, and scribbled on the back in tight, slanted handwriting, "LR, watch the fence line after dark." Ellie read it twice, then showed it to Ben. "LR has to be Lorena Ruiz, the woman from the voicemail." Ben frowned. But why would he write that? Was he watching her? "Or planning something worse," Ellie said quietly. Their mom looked up, pale. "We should give that to the sheriff." They scanned the note and emailed a photo. A few hours later, the sheriff called again. "We ran the handwriting through a federal analyst," he said. "It's a match to a man named Richard Foley, one of Ortega's former aliases. There's an active warrant out of New Mexico. He's wanted for questioning in the disappearance of a witness." Ben's throat went dry. "Disappearance?" "Ms. Ruiz hasn't been seen since last spring," the sheriff confirmed. "If you find anything else, don't wait. Call us right away." Ben hung up the phone in silence. This wasn't just about fake IDs anymore. It was about a woman who may have trusted the wrong man, just like they had. That afternoon, Ellie remembered something. She grabbed Duke's leash and her keys. "Come on, I want to check the shed again." Ben followed her to the backyard, Duke trotting ahead, nose to the ground. The shed hadn't been touched since the first search, but Ellie wasn't looking for obvious evidence. She scanned the floorboards, ran her fingers along the beams. "You know what Grandpa always kept in his shirt pocket?" "Gum?" "No, a notebook, a little black one." Ben blinked. "You think he hid it out here?" "I think it's worth checking." Duke began pawing at the far corner of the shed. Not frantic, like before. Just a light, rhythmic scratching against the wall. Ellie pulled the rake and shovel out of the way and knelt down. It took a few minutes, but eventually she found it, taped to the inside of a beam, hidden behind a loose plank. A small, weathered black notebook. She opened it slowly. The handwriting matched the note from the gas station. Inside were names, dates, and locations, dozens of them. Page after page of coded messages, crossed-out names, bank numbers, initials. One entry near the back stopped them both cold. Ruiz, flight rescheduled, must intercept before Tuesday. Ben's mouth went dry. He was following her. Ellie whispered, "He was planning something." They took photos of every page and sent them to the sheriff's office. Within hours, federal agents requested the original notebook be mailed to a field office in Atlanta. But even with the evidence mounting, there were still no signs of Harold. No credit card use, no security footage, no trace. It was like he had disappeared into thin air. That night, the house was quiet again, but it wasn't peace. It was fear. Their mom sat at the kitchen table with a mug of tea that had gone cold. She stared out the window, her face pale and drawn. "Do you think he'll come back?" she asked. Ellie hesitated. "I don't think he ever stays in one place for long, but now that he knows we found everything..." Ben didn't let her finish. "We locked the doors, right?" "All of them," their mom said softly. "I checked twice." Duke sat by the front door unmoving, guarding. Ben pulled his sleeping bag into the living room again and lay beside Duke, like he had the first night Harold arrived. "I don't get it," he whispered to Duke. "How do people like him sleep at night? How do they just walk around, lie to everyone, and act like nothing matters?" Duke didn't answer, of course, but he rested his chin gently on Ben's chest and gave a soft, reassuring sigh. It was enough. 3 days later, the agents arrived. A black SUV pulled up in front of the house just after noon. 2 men in dark suits stepped out and introduced themselves with federal IDs. One was tall, bald, and spoke in clipped sentences. The other was friendlier. Gray hair, glasses, mid-50s. "We're following up on Victor Ortega," the second agent said. "Mind if we come in?" They spent nearly 2 hours going through everything. The USB, the notebook, the receipts, even the voicemail. When they finished, the taller agent closed his folder and looked at them carefully. "We believe Ortega may have been operating under multiple identities since the early 90s, he said. "He has links to offshore laundering schemes and possibly connections to witness tampering in 2 states. But this is the first time he's stayed in one place long enough to leave a trail. Thanks to your dog," the other agent added with a smile toward Duke. Ben's chest swelled with pride. "He never trusted him, not for a second." The taller agent nodded. Neither should anyone else. As they prepared to leave, one of the agents handed Ellie a business card. "If he tries to contact you, don't engage. Call us immediately." Ellie took the card and stared at it. "Do you think he'll try?" "Men like him rarely let go of control," the agent replied. "So yes, we think he might." Then they were gone. That evening, Ben helped his mom clear out the guest room. It felt surreal, folding up the bed sheets, emptying drawers that had once held the lies of a man who'd almost become part of their family. As Ben reached under the bed for a stray sock, he found one last thing, taped to the frame. A single envelope. No name, no stamp, just a folded letter and a photo. The letter was handwritten, and the first word was Ben. "I never meant to hurt you, kid. You were a good boy. Smart. Reminded me of someone I used to be before all this. Don't let your sister turn you against me. The world's not as simple as she thinks. Sometimes good people do bad things to survive. I had a reason for everything, even the lies. Tell your dog to stop barking at ghosts. H." Ben stared at the signature. No name, just the letter H. The photo was of them. From the first week Harold arrived, Ben sitting on the porch, Duke by his side, and Harold standing behind them, smiling like he belonged there. Ben showed it to Ellie. She read the letter in silence, then tore it in half. "He'll always be a ghost," she said, "but we're the ones who get to keep the house." Duke let out a soft bark like he agreed. The sun was barely up when the call came in. Ben was still under the blanket on the living room couch, Duke curled beside him like a furry wall. The light from the kitchen hadn't even flicked on yet when his mom's cell buzzed across the counter, rattling against the granite. She answered with a sleepy, "Hello?" and then stood so still it made Ben sit up. "Are you sure?" she said softly. Pause. "And you're positive it's him?" She turned around, phone still at her ear, and looked at Ben and Ellie with eyes full of something between fear and relief. "They think they've found him." 2 hours later, a federal agent returned to their house. This time, he wasn't alone. "They got a tip from a pawn shop in St. Louis," the agent said. A man matching Ortega's description came in last night trying to sell a watch. Vintage Rolex, registered under the name Richard Foley. Ellie leaned forward. Do they think it's really him? The agent nodded. Security camera caught a clean shot. It's him. He's cut his hair and grown a beard, but facial recognition matched. Ben rubbed his hands over his jeans. Are they going to arrest him? They're coordinating with local authorities, the agent replied. But he's slippery. If he senses we're close, he'll vanish again. Duke let out a low growl from the hallway. Everyone turned. The agent smiled. That dog's got good instincts. He knows when something's wrong, Ben said, petting Duke's head. He always does. That night, no one slept. Not really. Ellie stayed up researching pawn shops and bus terminals in Missouri. Their mom sat at the dining table rereading the torn letter Ben had taped back together, Harold's last words to them, scribbled like a half-hearted apology. Ben couldn't stop thinking about what the agent had said. If he senses we're close, he'll vanish again. Because that's what Harold, Victor, did best. He disappeared. He'd spent his entire life rewriting himself, erasing tracks, becoming someone else the moment things got too real. And part of Ben hated how much of his brain still pictured him on the porch, smiling with a cup of coffee, telling bad jokes like any other grandpa. But now Ben knew the truth. Harold didn't leave things behind because he forgot. He left them behind because he never intended to come back. And that made everything feel worse. The next morning, Ben walked out to the mailbox. Duke followed, tail alert, nose twitching as they stepped across the lawn. Spring had arrived fast. Buds on the maple trees, birds chirping from the gutter, the smell of damp earth still clinging to the air. Inside the box was a single white envelope. No stamp, no return address, just their street number handwritten on the front. Ben's stomach dropped. He ripped it open on the porch steps. Inside was a photo. It was grainy, low quality, but unmistakable. Harold, beard and all, standing beside a gas pump at a roadside station. A red flannel shirt, a plastic bag in his hand, and behind him, almost out of frame, Lorena Ruiz. Ben blinked. She was alive. Ellie rushed out behind him, eyes wide when she saw the picture. Where did this come from? The mailbox, Ben said. No name, no letter, just this. Their mom came out too, holding a sweater. What's going on? Ellie handed her the photo. I think someone's trying to tell us she's okay. Or trying to get us to stop looking, Ben added. They scanned the photo and sent it to the FBI. Hours later, an agent called back. That station's in Kansas, he said, near a town called Garden City. We've got agents en route now. If Ortega's with her, we may finally bring him in. Do you think she's with him willingly? Ellie asked. The agent was quiet for a moment. We don't know. She's been missing nearly a year. If he manipulated her the way he did your family, it's possible she doesn't even realize she's in danger. Ben's fists clenched. Then you have to get her out. We will, the agent promised. Thanks to Duke and all of you. That night, the house felt tense, like they were waiting for a verdict. Ben sat in Duke's favorite spot by the front window, staring out at the quiet street, wondering how many times Harold had done this to other families, pretended, lied, manipulated. But this time, he hadn't gotten away. This time, a dog saw through him. And that changed everything. Around midnight, Ellie's phone buzzed. She grabbed it fast, scanning the screen before gasping. They got him, she whispered. Ben shot up. What? They caught him in Kansas. Local deputies pulled him over on a rural road. He was in a stolen truck under a fake name. Lorena was with him. She's safe. Shaken up, but safe. Their mom sank into a chair, covering her mouth with her hands. Oh my God. They're flying her to a safe location now, Ellie continued. And they're charging him with identity fraud, obstruction, and possible kidnapping. Ben looked at Duke. You hear that, boy? You got him. Duke wagged his tail gently, then laid his head on Ben's lap. 3 days later, a woman showed up on their doorstep. She wore a loose cardigan and jeans, dark circles under her eyes, her black hair tied back loosely. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched a manila envelope to her chest. Hi, she said softly. I'm Lorena Ruiz. Ben's mom opened the door wider. Please, come in. Lorena sat at the kitchen table, barely touching the tea they offered. I just wanted to say thank you, she said. They told me it was your family, your dog. Ben glanced at Duke, who was curled on the floor by her feet, calm but alert. I don't know how long I was under his thumb, she said. It's like you wake up one day and realize everything's been a performance. He never hurt me, not physically, but he made me feel like I didn't have a choice. Ellie nodded gently. He did the same here. Played a role. Made us feel like we owed him something. Lorena opened the envelope. Inside were photographs, documents Harold had hidden in a storage unit in New Mexico. Bank records, logs, even an old fake passport with the same photo he used to become Grandpa Harold. "I want you to have these," she said. "You helped stop him. These belong in the story." Ben looked at her. "What are you going to do now?" "I don't know," Lorena admitted, "but I know who I am again. That's a start." She reached down and scratched behind Duke's ears. "You saved me," she whispered, "and I never even met you." Duke gave a low, happy grunt and leaned into her hand. Later that night, Ellie started a blog. She titled the first post, "The Dog Who Knew Grandpa Wasn't Real." Within a week, it went viral. People flooded the comments with their own stories of suspicious strangers, family betrayals, and the quiet wisdom of dogs who seemed to know things no one else could see. They added a photo of Duke in his sheriff's bandana, sitting proud beside Ben on the front porch. And under the caption, Ellie wrote, "Not all heroes bark, but this one did, just loud enough to save a life." 6 weeks had passed since Victor Ortega was arrested in Kansas. Ben still kept the newspaper article taped to his wall. The headline read, "FBI nabs fugitive con man after family dog raises alarm." And below that, a picture of Duke, ears perked, tongue out, wearing his old sheriff's department vest. They hadn't used the family's full names, but anyone in town knew exactly who it was about. Some folks had started calling him Deputy Duke. Others just called him a hero. But to Ben, he was still Duke. The same loyal German shepherd who'd slept beside him through thunderstorms, guarded him on Halloween night, and barked whenever he got too close to the cookie jar. Except now he'd saved not just one family, but two. It wasn't easy going back to normal. Their mom took time off work. She spent most mornings reading in the backyard, sometimes just staring into the trees, petting Duke with one hand. Ben could tell she was still processing it all. The lies, the letter, the feeling that the man she thought was her father had been a ghost in a borrowed life. But Ellie helped. She sat with her after dinner, answered questions, showed her the folder where she'd compiled everything. Notes, emails, receipts, even the audio from Lorena's voicemail. "I can't believe I didn't see it," their mom said one night. Ellie shook her head gently. "None of us did, except Duke." Their mom smiled. "Maybe he knew what I couldn't let myself feel." Ben piped up from the couch. "I think Duke smelled the fear." Everyone laughed softly, and for the first time in weeks, it sounded real. One morning, a package arrived. Brown box, no label, no sender. Ben opened it on the porch with Duke lying nearby. Inside was a small wooden plaque, the kind you'd find hanging on the wall of a sheriff's office. The words were engraved in brass. "For courage beyond instinct, presented to Duke. In recognition of loyalty, bravery, and life-saving actions. U.S. Marshal Service." Ben blinked. "Whoa." Inside the box was also a letter, typed on official letterhead. "Dear Duke, heroes come in many forms. Some wear uniforms, some carry badges. You did neither, but what you did cannot be forgotten. On behalf of the United States Marshal Service, we thank you for your service. Director Carl Maddox." Ben showed it to his mom. She teared up. "They got it right," she whispered. "He's more than a pet. He's part of this family's history now." They mounted the plaque above the mantel. It sat beside Duke's old K9 service photo, ears straighter, face younger, but the same unshakable stare. That summer, Ellie's blog grew faster than any of them expected. Within 3 months, The Dog Who Knew Grandpa Wasn't Real had been picked up by 3 major news outlets and adapted into a podcast episode. A production assistant even emailed asking if they'd consider a documentary. "I mean, come on," Ellie laughed. "Duke's practically famous." They created a YouTube short series about retired canines, using their own experience as the first story. They called the channel Heroes for Animals, and the views started climbing within days. At night, Ben read comments out loud. "This made me cry. What a good boy. We need more stories like this in the world. Dogs know, they always do." Duke didn't understand internet fame, but he did like the extra treats and belly rubs that came with it. One day in late August, Lorena Ruiz returned to visit. She looked stronger, happier. She'd found a job helping women transition out of abusive relationships, and the government was supporting her while she testified in court against Ortega. But before she left, she pulled Ben aside. "I wanted to give you something," she said. From her purse, she took out a worn leather wallet. Inside was a photo, her and her daughter, maybe 5 or 6 years old, smiling on a beach somewhere with wind-blown hair and ice cream cones. "He used to keep this in the glove box," she said. "Said it was from his better days, but it's not his, it's mine." Ben took the photo carefully. "I think he wanted to remember who he pretended to be," Lorena added. "But you helped me remember who I really am." She reached down and hugged Duke. He leaned into her chest gently, tail wagging slow and steady. "Thank you, Detective Duke," she whispered. The school year came quickly. Ben started 8th grade. Ellie applied to colleges, but the memory of what happened never fully faded. Sometimes Ben would sit outside in the evening, watching Duke sniff the wind like he was still guarding something no one else could see. One night, Ben asked him softly, "How did you know?" Duke looked up at him, old eyes still full of fire, and licked his hand. That was enough of an answer. The last piece of the puzzle came in early October. A letter from the FBI. They'd officially closed the case on Victor Ortega, pending final sentencing in federal court. He'd pled guilty to fraud, identity theft, and obstruction. Multiple charges stacked over 3 decades. He wouldn't see the outside of a prison wall again. Ben read the last line twice. "If not for the actions of your retired K-9, this case would have remained unsolved. Thank you for believing in his instincts." They framed that letter, too. Because some stories don't end with explosions or chase scenes. Sometimes they end with quiet faith in a dog's bark. A month later, the town held a small ceremony in the community park. A K-9 officer from Nashville spoke. A state senator gave a brief speech, and Ben was invited to say a few words. He stepped up to the microphone, hands shaking slightly, heart full. "I never thought our dog would change lives," he began. "He was supposed to just be part of our family. But it turns out Duke never stopped working. Even after retirement, even after his badge came off, he still knew right from wrong." He looked down at Duke, lying beside the podium in his new collar that read, "Honorary Deputy." And when no one else saw what was wrong, Ben added, he did, and he didn't give up. The crowd clapped. Duke barked once, like he knew it was for him. That night, the whole family sat on the porch as the sun dipped below the trees. Ellie nudged Ben. "You did great up there." Ben grinned. "I didn't cry, so that's a win." Their mom brought out lemonade and dog biscuits. She passed the plate to Duke like he was a guest of honor. And maybe he was. After a long pause, she said, "I think your real grandfather would have been proud of how you handled this." Ben looked out into the quiet street. Maybe Duke is the one who taught us how. Sometimes a family isn't defined by blood. Sometimes it's defined by the ones who stay, the ones who fight, the ones who never stop scratching at the truth until it comes out. Duke didn't just save their family, he gave them back their future. Thank you for following our story. If you believe dogs see the truth even when people don't, give this story a thumbs up and share it with someone who loves dogs. Do you think your dog has ever sensed something you didn't? Tell us your story in the comments. We'd love to hear it.